And we're live. Welcome, friends. This is the Collector's Showcase PC Journey. I am your host, DPZ, at PC with DPZ on Instagram. And with me today, I have Mr. Jack Willis, Chronic Collectibles, better known on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, Jack.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dennis. It's been, excited when you reached out to me and, excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Yeah, great. I'll get the right camera angle here so I can actually look at you. Again, like I've talked about this with a lot of folks, this show is designed to highlight the collection, sprinkle a little bit of hobby talk, and kind of where things are. We were just talking about off air. Do we even run into anybody that collects around us? It seems like we're kind of all in these little caves, and we connect with each other on Instagram. We have this huge community on Instagram, and maybe just people are afraid to say something out loud about it, but feel very isolated. But unless you go to a show, and I feel like living, and you're in Texas, for your transplant from New York, but still, yeah, you're from New York, so you're still an East Coast guy, and I feel like the hobby just lives over there. All the content creators, pretty much everybody are either from, like, you just draw a line from like Texas East, and you go a line to Texas West, and there's like a couple of us. And I know Cali has some people in LA and Burbank and all that, but it just seems you're just isolated. So thanks for jumping on and spending some time with me today and talking about your collection and your thoughts on the hobby. Let's start with a story about you. Like, where did you come from? How did you originate into the hobby?
Yeah, so cards and me started back, I would say in 96, born in 90. So about 6 years old or so. And like you mentioned, grew up in the New York, New Jersey area. So initially started collecting baseball cards, mostly Yankees stuff. For a little while, I think from 96 to 2000 or so, up until, the time I was in middle school, just kind of collected as a hobby, sports card, baseball, football, not too much basketball. And then, definitely some Pokemon a little bit as well back then. Similar to all the other origin stories you hear, you start to grow up, you go away, and it seems like everyone around 2019, 2020 found their way back into the hobby at some point, one way or another. And for me, didn't, jump back into it right away. Pandemic started early 2020 and, found myself with some more time on my hands and did not go back into cards right away. The first thing I jumped into was day trading stocks. And so that was an interesting little ride, and did that for, a couple months. And then, with the whole GameStop, AMC stuff, red flags started going off on, I don't know if this is really what I want to be doing, with my free time. It seemed like I was putting in a lot of work, and there was no rhyme or reason to whether stock was going up or down or anything like that. And so, one of my main hobbies has always been fantasy sports, fantasy football. And so I've got a following of that on Twitter, and I started to see some people in that circle start to talk about cards, maybe towards mid 2000 or mid 2020, and then kind of going into the end of the year. And it was always, somewhat interesting to me. It would bring back some memories, but never really dove into it until, towards the end of 2020, with football season and everything kind of wrapping up. I forget what exactly it was that got me. Actually, you know what it was? I think there was ESPN Daily article or podcast or something about sports cards, and I listened to that, and that kind of piqued my interest again. And so I started just went right back down that rabbit hole, and I went back onto my eBay, and it looks like the first purchase I made back in the hobby was kind of early November 2020. I think I had just bought some base basketball or football cards at that point, and I was just kind of entrenching myself into this, trying to learn everything. I remember when I first jumped back in, I saw Panini. And I was like, what's this Panini they're talking about? Because, when I was, growing up and collecting, it was, Topps and Upper Deck. Mm-hmm. And I actually grabbed, some of my old albums here. And got
look at that.
Upper Deck, Kajana Carter. I think he was a number one pick and never panned into anything, but like some 2020 Topps. But this whole binder is, all bricked together of old football cards. And, the same thing with, the old school. Before they had Zion cases, they had these babies. They got Jack's cards in here, and this was, I think, all my baseball cards at the time. So when I was starting to get back into cards, I had my parents ship all my old cards down to me, and so that's kind of what I got in return, and did a lot of digging through that to kind of reignite some memories and stuff like that. And I was looking to hopefully land on a gold mine, but I don't think I was collecting the right things in the late 90s and early 2000s. The one card I did find, probably the best card in there, I brought that over here to show today, but it was a Jordan en Fuego card, which was, nice. I found it was just kind of sitting there in a stack of some other cards. So it didn't grade the best. And that's a whole nother kind of avenue we can get down with these HGA slabs that I ventured into. But I thought this was pretty cool.
It still looks cool. I mean, it's not going to be a high grading card. It's like one of those first cards you have, but you're putting it in a case or a slab that looks really cool, presents nice, and the story behind the cards what really matters. And you add a little color to it. It's not like that's your investment piece, right? It's fun. The story behind it's fun. You're the first person who's actually shown like the old school case, and the only person that's pulled out a binder and went like that. That's it. You're everybody's like, oh, my slabs. I'm like I have a 90 leaf Griffey that's still like a little plastic sleeve thing that I thought was like, it was a pretty sturdy, I obviously felt it was going to be valuable in time. So that was the only thing I really took care of, that and a 90s hoop David Robinson, not the one where he's holding the jersey, but the other one. Those are the cards I'm like, this is it. Someday these are going to be worth so much money. Little did we know. Very cool. So you found en Fuego. Well, let's talk about grading a little bit, because I'm kind of the mind, like, if we don't dive into while you're thinking about it, you're just going to forget about it. We're not going to talk about it. So let's talk about grading. What are your thoughts on grading? Since you got back into this, you probably learned about grading.
Yeah. So I had no idea really about grading at all. And, when I got back into this, basically what I was doing to buy cards and kind of establish, an eBay account so that I could, be a reputable seller and transact on there. I would literally just go on there and search rookie card, and then, filter to ending soonest. And I would just kind of be buying, whatever I could, just to kind of, build some flow and get some transactions going on the eBay. So some of those at that time, I think at that time was right when the initial PSA shutdowns were happening at that time. So I, didn't ever get caught up in the whole, there's cheap grading and then all those cards got trapped at PSA. So my first experience with grading was when the HGA push was going on. And I think all the podcasts, people were listening to at that time were kind of pushing HGA. So I ventured into that and, tried that out. And, it was being new to the hobby, it seemed like it was a decent process, but, once he kind of got into it and realized, specifically to HGA, that just the resale value wasn't there. There was issues with, I think, some of these cases, didn't turn out exactly well. And, the saga goes on with them. But I think overall, grading, it was, it's definitely a hard, thing to come into, not having any background on what this is, because just an outsider is like, well, why do I need another label on this card to tell me what it is? So I guess in that standpoint, from an outside looking in, it's kind of, an artificial scarcity tactic. But, definitely understand the need and the place for it now in the hobby a couple years later, and have respect for it. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's definitely one of the barriers to entry in the hobby is understanding that concept and jumping into it, which could be confusing for some.
It is. I think it comes down to when you first start, you think, okay, these junk wax 80s cards at one point did have a scarcity to them via grade, but that was because only so many people had graded that card. And then once everybody was pulling these cards or buying packs or buying wax that was still sealed and they're submitting them, all of a sudden the pop started going up. And there's some, exceptions to the rule. There's some of those 80s baseball cards like the Clemens and Kirby Puckett 89 update or 84 update. Those in 10s. I kind of figure anything less than 500 copies is a pretty good whole. It's a pretty good card to have. It's fairly rare for that generation, and that generation for a lot of folks our age are going to love those cards until So for our lifetimes, they'll still be important. The next lifetime, who knows, right? Mickey Mantle probably will persevere, but Jordan and LeBron and Kobe, and there's a handful. But I think the grading is an interesting conversation, because I think it applies to, you get the rare cars like those 90s inserts, right? There's only so many of them anyway, so the grade's nice, but it doesn't necessarily dictate anything.
Yeah.
But it's also nice knowing they're authentic, because now you get into a whole other conversation of authenticity, right? Which I think is important with those cars. You know, the kind of money you're going to spend on some of those. And I have a handful of them with my Kobe collection, that, and some of my Griffies, I wanted to know that they were legitimate. And there's no guarantee, right? They still get through, but you do all your due diligence, make your best decision. Kobe autos for me have been the biggest hair bringer, because it's like his early autos. I like his early autos. You literally have to study what his autograph looks like and then discern whether it's the real one. It's the one from it's either authentic. It's the authentic one from that time period. I mean, the nuance is insane. Like,
it was interesting that you say that, because I was actually this past, I think maybe a weekend or two ago, I was looking at, there was a Kobe Metal Universe, I think 97 or 98. And it was a in-person autograph on it. And it was being sold on eBay, I think through Probstein or MC Sports Cards or one of those accounts, and was kind of, thinking about it, but I was like, oh, that's ungraded. I don't really, I might trust the seller, but you never know, even with the eBay authenticity guarantee now. But yeah, definitely.
Those Kobe's are, you're wise. Those Kobe's even graded, or some of them aren't real. And when you really dig in, I mean, I'm not going to geek out too much on Kobe, but you really dig in, those, 98 to 2000, there's some backdoor tops cards that I like. The AG9 and the AG2, his first tops release autographs, he has those too. And those are really cool to have, but it's almost like you want one that's a bit faded, because it's legitimate, right? And it's a real one, based off all your research and all the blowout forum research you could possibly do, talking to a bunch of people, like Eric Myers, Haley Hustle, John, the basketball card guy. These are really tremendous resources to understand what's a real auto for Kobe. And it's sometimes those cards were backdoored there, and then they were signed later by Kobe. So the autograph's legitimate, but was it the auto you got when you pulled the card from the pack? Then there's a whole nother conversation on that. So it just gets really crazy. So yes, graded for sure. And then you go from there, you need to go down from there. And then you have to really dissect it. You will see on an episode, it's funny because we'll see, if you watch these episodes, you'll see John, the basketball card guy, and I had a long conversation about this. And I actually discovered that my auto might not be the pack pulled auto from on my AG9, the second card. But I did a bunch of due diligence after the fact and noticed and compared it to a lot of cards like that. And the autograph looks exactly the same. But, then it kind of came down to, well, it could have been just signed later. But I'm like, well, most of these cards look like that. So that would make, and there's some of them that are faded. So the whole conversation kind of blossomed. I was going to sell it, but then I decided I'm not going to sell this card.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to sell it. I'm going to keep it, because I think I'm going to bank on the fact that it's legitimate. It's from that time period, and it was signed then, because it looks like all the other cards the way they were signed, unless he signed a ton of them in 2015, which doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to stick to my guns. Sorry, John, if you're watching this, I'm going to stick to my guns on that one. But the nuance on grading, the grading conversation is very interesting in trying to avoid forgery and the cards not being real.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think that's the great thing about this hobby is there's so many rabbit holes like this that you can just kind of dive down and get lost in, these stories and history and everything like that. And that's great. And, speaking of rabbit holes to get lost down, I think that continues my origin story, into 2021. I'd mentioned, I was just kind of had no rhyme or reason to what I was buying, just kind of searching rookie, just buying cards, just trying to, build up some transactions. And I think that's kind of when I found breaking. And that's kind of the next avenue in the hobby I explored. And I think someone on Twitter had posted about, they were joining a break with this breaker, and I hopped in, Mikey B cards, and did that for, I think 3 months, early 2021. And I think about the time that I got the email from the breaker saying that I got upgraded to their VIP status was when I rethought what I was doing with breaking. I was like, I must be spending some money then if I got the VIP email. Yeah. But I think that was definitely a good way to start learning product, get exposed to all sorts of different cards. And I think, what got me hooked on it, the gambling side of it is, the first break I ever jumped into, I bought the Vikings in a team break and hit this Justin Jefferson black Pandora out of 25 rookie, number 25. So that,
nice.
as a Vikings fan, Justin Jefferson being my biggest PC. That kind of started, actually, I guess, my PC of Justin Jefferson. I'd been picking up some smaller base cards, so I guess that was the first kind of low number parallel that I hit on him, and so from there, I think that's when I started to get a little bit more focused on what exactly I was collecting and how I was collecting. And so I think from that point in kind of Q1 to Q2 of 2021, I kind of reshifted my focus into just the teams I like, just the players I like, and actually starting to build a little bit of a personal collection, a PC of those players. And so for me, my teams, I think my favorite overall team, Minnesota Vikings, I started liking them in 1998. They were 15-1 and season kind of on the trajectory of what they're doing right now. Hopefully it ends better. But yeah, so Vikings being my favorite team, I started collecting a lot of Justin Jefferson. Like I said, I was jumping into Minnesota Vikings PYT breaks and picking up cards that way. On the baseball side, like you mentioned, I'm from the New York, New Jersey area, so big Yankees fan. Although I do live in Houston, so that's been interesting for the past decade. With before I moved down here, the Yankees had just won a World Series in 2009, and the Astros were the worst team in the league in like the mid 2010s, and now they're kind of on that dynasty level status, and my Yankees just can't seem to get past them, and been going to the ALCS games here in Houston, and it's just not worked out. But hopefully with re-signing Judge that changes, and Verlander moving out of town, so we'll see there. But yeah, so those have kind of been my two main PC collections. Baseball and football being my main sports, and then basketball kind of being a third. But for me, for basketball, I think that's kind of when I didn't have a rhyme or reason of kind of what I was collecting. That's where I was, I think, more so listening to influencers or podcasters or kind of whatever the flavor of the day was, and kind of buying whatever the popular base prism silver or whatever that was. And so I think later on in this saga, I think where I've learned a lesson is really sticking to collecting what you like, because at the end of the day, that's the cards are what you're going to be left with if there's no monetary value in them. So you better like what you have. And the basketball stuff for me, I enjoy watching a game here or there, but it's just never been a main sport of mine. But I've started to pick up a Rockets PC being here in Houston, which has been nice because they're not in the limelight. They don't have too many high priced. Well, I guess Jalen Green's pretty hyped up now, but my Rockets PC has mostly been Kevin Porter Jr. So that's kind of a nice little lower priced PC to work on while that team tries to grow and progress. So yeah, it's I would say now I'm definitely more so focused on kind of those three main PCs, and kind of selectively going after those cards, or that's kind of what I was doing for the latter half of last year, and then getting into this year with the market definitely changing. I started to look at those teams, but not the current players, maybe some former players that have retired, where there might be a little bit more stable value in those cards. So this year I started to add on to those PCs on the Vikings side, adding Randy Moss and Chris Carter, and on the Yankees side, dipping my toes into some mantle cards, but very, very low grade. So it's been an interesting journey so far, but wouldn't change it for the life of me. And it's been a great 2+ years since rediscovering all of this.
It's interesting. You talk about how you focused your intentions. It sounds like you did it rather quickly. I mean, I'm a Bowman Chrome guy, and I went crazy with all the prospects, but I also love collecting. So I kind of found myself having a hard time actually selling the cards, because I thought, I got a hold of this guy. I got in early. I got to hang on. But they're not all going to win. Even the really good players are not even really, the markets are interesting for them unless you have a really big card of theirs. So I end up, it took me a while to focus, and I think we all kind of did that. We all wait, no time out. I need to get rid of all these, and I'm going to go actually focus my collection on things I actually want and want to keep. I'm into, I'm interested in. And so people went through that phase. And I think a lot of folks did it at the same time. And we're just selling cards as fast as they can sell them, get them out of their collection so they can go buy the things they actually like. So the hobby was still getting the influx of money, but it was just changing from that base junk wax. This isn't really, to, but you have a Houston collection. That's great. You have some skin in the game when people talk about basketball all the time. So I'm not a huge basketball guy either. Obviously, we lost the Sonics, and ever since we lost the Sonics, kind of wrote it off. I'm a Gonzaga basketball fan. Baseball's my thing. I'm a Seattle Mariner lifelong hardcore fan. So my heart is like just bursting knowing, even if it's the Yankees, the Yankees are still awesome. I have a lot of respect for the Yankees, but Houston Astros, I can't even, there's no words. It's really tough. It's a really hard thing. They definitely have our number though. So I can't, they have our number. I can't say anything. They just have our number right now, but for now, but, so let me dive into another topic. Let's look at some more of your cards. Looks like you have some HGA cases there. Sounds like you kind of went in on HGA a little bit. Is that fair to say? Like you submitted?
I wouldn't say went in, but so me and grading. So since joining the hobby, I've probably graded maybe between 100 and 200 cards. So nothing major. Not bulk submitter or anything like that. But I think from HGA, I probably submitted between 10 and 20 cards overall. And that was kind of just, initially feeling out kind of the whole grading process, prepping a card, sending it in, playing the waiting game, all that stuff. So I think it was good to kind of, learn the process through subbing to HGA. And I think that definitely helped, moving on. And, now I've started to grade with SGC and PSA. And so I think what I learned from that initial experience has kind of helped me, have a little bit better of an eye of, what to look for, or, what cards to send in. Cause I think when I initially sent in my first SGC submission, I think I sent in about 40 football and basketball base cards about end of last summer or so, and got back a whole variety of grades, some good, some not. And I was just, I think at that point, I just thought you just send everything in and you see what you get. And, obviously learn from there. You have to have a much better eye of, what you're sending in. I think especially now, prices have gone down, but compared to, what they were when it was, $6 a PSA card or something, I think you could, be a little bit more liberal on what you send in. But with prices going up and everything, I think you have to have a little bit better of an eye and choose on what you've been sending in. So, fortunately, don't have too much locked up in HGA slabs, and the stuff that does have resale value has been cracked out. I think these are actually the only two HGA slabs I have left: the Jefferson and the Jordan here.
And those are more PCs for you anyway.
Yeah. They wouldn't. They're not. Those two are not leaving the collection, so they can stay in there. I think the Jefferson might look good in an SGC tux. I'm thankful for HGA being a little lenient on this one, because I know there's a print line right across it, so I still got the 9 mint on there, so I'm not sure.
With HGA being lenient, yes, isn't that the truth? Oh boy, oh wow. All right, let's play a little game. You sounds like you have a lot of cards, 100 to 200 graded. I think I've graded like 30 cards in the last 3 years, so you're well ahead. Very much a savant when it comes to grading and knowing what to do. I always get nervous. I send them in and they always come back like terrible. I'm like, I just literally pulled this out of the pack. I was like very careful with it. I eyeballed it. I used a little loop and everything. It's like 7. I'm like, all right, I'm not grading. I'm just going to buy slabs. Forget it. I don't even care. And I'll just try to buy the ones that are like more unique, so it doesn't really matter as much. Something happens, you got to leave that house quick. And you just got to grab, and you can't grab a case. You have to just grab what you can grab and you can handle, because you got to walk your kids or whatever. You got to, move quick. What are you grabbing? What are you taking with you?
Yeah, so in addition to the 2 cards I just showed you, one would be this guy.
Wow.
Chris Carter, PMG, 97. It's 106 out of 105. So this is the most money I've ever spent on a sports card. I think pretty much every card I've bought has been $500 or less for the most part. Mm-hmm. This is the first card I spent over $1,000 on. So Chris Carter, going back to that 1998 season.
Yeah, that's tough for him.
That's that kind of initial Vikings team. So there's a lot of nostalgia, a lot of memories. Just the whole. I know people have thoughts on PMG, and it wasn't really collected in the 90s when it initially went out, but now it's hype. But I still think it's a really, really cool set. The whole precious or the whole Metal Universe collection. I've got a binder of I think it's the 97, just the base set for basketball. I just think they're just really cool cards with like the weird space stuff going on in the background and everything. So I'm definitely drawn to that. So yeah, this would definitely be one of them. And then from my Judge PC, I would probably go, it's just a Topps Chrome.
But it's a gold label.
There, but it's the gold label. So I think that's probably one of the hardest things to get. I was talking with Andrew Goldberg, and he's been doing that submission, the Luka Tiger submission with SGC, and they haven't hit a gold label the entire time that they've been doing that. I think it speaks to it's a nice little added piece of rarity there. I think I mentioned it back at the beginning. Artificial scarcity bashed it a little bit, but in this case, I do enjoy it.
No, I think it is you get that, or or it's the NBA, the PWCC distinctions. I think people have conflicting opinions about that, but I think as a collector, it's kind of fun. It adds an element, right? It adds another element, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and then the last thing I would grab, it's actually not with me right now. It's at PSA. It's kind of the initial collection or collector piece that I've had going back to 1998. I attended David Wells' perfect game at Yankee Stadium in 98. And so I've got the ticket stub for that game. They were giving out Beanie Baby Valentino. And there was a trading card that came along with that Valentino. So I've got the set, the Beanie Baby, the trading card, and then the ticket stub, which is getting authenticated at PSA right now. So that would probably be the last piece. And that's kind of moved around from me from high school to college. I think the Beanie Baby came with me, and the ticket did too. And so it's not in the best condition, but I think it's just a collectible that I've held on to the longest. And I think there's just a bunch of nostalgia with that. I remember after the game, I was there it was one of my friends' 8th grade birthday parties. And so it was a group of guys and his dad. And after the game, this like scalper came up to our group and was trying to offer $100 back in 98 for those ticket stubs. And he was like, no, the dad was like, no, you want to hold on to that. You want to keep this piece. So I'm glad I did that.
That's really cool. You can have a connection with your dad, and the story behind that's pretty important and pretty special. Keep the Beanie Baby away from Cage, though. I know he's a Beanie Baby guy from what I've learned. So you've got David Wells. You got the Valentino card. You got David Wells' ticket stuff from his perfect game. You've got the Randy Moss, Chris Carter. Sorry, Precious Metal Gems. Did Randy Moss have a card in that set?
He has, I think it's the year after, because he's the 98 rookie, but I believe it's in his Marshall jersey. I don't know if there's the PMG on it or not. I'm not quite sure. That's the part of this hobby I need to dive more down, is kind of just these kind of obscure collections and what cards are in what set and everything. But yeah, I know it would be, because I've got the base card in his Marshall jersey from his rookie year. I'm just not sure if there's a PMG. And if there is, it's probably a lot more expensive than the Chris Carter one.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. All right, let's pretend for a second someone gives you $100,000 and they go, hey, you can go buy whatever you want, right? Remember, $100,000, you can buy any card you want, consolidate, sell cards, put together, whatever you want to do. What do you do?
Yeah, so I think my answer is pretty bland and boring, but I think it would bring, I think I would get the most out of it. And, like I said, I like where my journey has brought me so far in this hobby, and, like where I'm at. And I don't think I would change a thing. So I don't think I would want to bring in something that would, totally change what I'm doing. So when I was thinking about this, why not just take the highest graded 52 mantle available with that? So I think PSA 4, PSA 5 wherever the market's at the time you give me $100,000 and do that and just stash that away and just keep doing what I'm doing with the current PC. I wouldn't want to, buy up a bunch of stuff and change what I'm currently doing. I think, just take a nice piece like that, lock it away in a safe and see where it's at in a decade or so.
No, that's an interesting perspective on not wanting to change your trajectory and your habits and your collecting habits. And some people would say, oh, $100,000, maybe that changes I never thought about it that way. It could change your collection, your behavior and what you're looking for to buy, because now all of a sudden you have this card. And that happens. I mean, I remember when I first started buying, I was spending a certain amount of money, and then I made it okay to spend this much, and I made it okay to spend this much. And, and then you'd never think you'd spend this much on a card, and you are, and then it kind of keeps going. And so I can see how that could happen if you all of a sudden had an influx of money like that, where you just go, okay, I'm going to buy a real big card. And now I don't want these small cards anymore. I want to keep buying big cards, and I can continue down that path. So that's a great idea. Put it in a great store of value and then move on. What are your thoughts on the hobby right now? Where do you see things going?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think honestly, I truly look at the hobby as a hobby. I think it's going to follow where this economy is going. So, because I think, a lot of the hobby, while there's, the headline big cards and everything, I think the hobby is still driven by, the people in it in the day to day, just putting whatever leftover disposable income they have back into the hobby. And when you start drying up that disposable income with, increased cost of goods and everything going on in the hobby, I think, there's going to be a little bit more to pinch there. So, I still see it, I think we have a little bit more to go before things start to kind of even out. But, like I said, and I've been, picking up some pieces along the way. I think it's a great time right now to, start adding some stuff to your PC that you don't think you could have in the past. And, I've been doing so, recently with, I've been lucky that at least 2 of my PCs this year have had some pretty good success with Judge hitting his 62 home runs. So I was able to sell off, pretty much all the base stuff I had and consolidate into some nicer pieces. And then same thing with, with what Justin Jefferson's doing right now. I think after that catch he had against the Bills, I sold off, a lot of the base and kind of, some numbered stuff and some auto stuff that, I didn't necessarily seeing myself hold on to a long time, so that I could, upgrade into some bigger things. And then, also with, the auctions going on right now, I think there's opportunity now more than ever to pick up some pieces. So I've been doing that, bit by bit on PWCC. That's where I've kind of been picking up those lower graded mantles. And some of the Randy Moss and Chris Carter cards that I talked about. But yeah, I'm still in it for the long run. I think it's a great hobby. I'm happy I found it. But I think it's just going to follow the rest of the economy, and hopefully it starts singing a different tune by end of Q1 next year.
I think so. I think Q4 might see the recession enter, and then we might exit it there. But I think it's naturally going to have to happen to curb inflation and squeeze it. Fed funds rate I think will be at 6, and that's going to just squeeze too much. I think it's kind of stops the money, and but I think it'll be okay. I think unemployment will creep up a little bit, and we'll get to a balance, and labor will stabilize, and I think it'll help kind of usher the economy along, and then you just recover. And it's all about just being patient and riding it out. That would be my obvious advice to anyone. People have financial advisors, you just listen to them, but I think it's just riding it out. I think the hobby will do the same thing. You just ride it out. I wouldn't be fire selling things unless you absolutely need the liquidity, but you're making smart decisions, and you're focused on your PC, and you're focused on what you're buying. Justin Jefferson, Randy Moss, Chris Carter, some Mickey Mantle, and you're not getting too crazy with what you're spending and what you're buying, and you're taking advantage of deals, which is really cool. That's what the collector can do right now, to have fun and enjoy it and continue to stimulate your senses of like, oh, I love collecting. And the hobby community is a really neat community. I know we talk about how we don't see anybody around us really in person very often, but there's so many people that do it. I think there's probably more people that do it than we know. It's never like a thing to start talking about in the grocery store.
Everyone's got a closet collection somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there's a hardcore collector somewhere, and they're just down the street and you had no idea. And next thing you know, I mean, but it's hard to all of a sudden start talking about cards. It's not like talking about the game that just happened. That's easy to strike up that conversation. A coat or a shirt, unless you're wearing apparel, then it's kind of difficult. Jack, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thanks for taking some time to share with us some of your cards and share your story. Real neat stuff. I think that some of the things you were going to take with you, your important pieces, they have a story behind them, which they all do. Cards always have a story. That's the best part about cards is they have a story. That's why we all love it, right? What we love these shows is because they have stories. We love listening to the content because we love hearing about the stories. And we all love seeing other people's collections. That's what the show is about, is showcasing other people's collections. So we can kind of like see, because we all want to know what everybody else has, because it'd be kind of neat to see. Not everybody has all the PMGs and all the cool stuff. You have one. Not everybody has them, but you also have an Infuego Michael Jordan card. You have the Justin Jefferson rated rookie. I mean, you have these really neat cards that are very distinct to you, and that's what makes the hobby awesome. So thanks again for being with us today and on the show. And again, you can follow Jack. You're at Chronic Collectibles.
Yeah, Chronic Collectibles. That's where you can find me on IG. I do some tweeting on my other account, which is at Willis, which is a weird spelling. It's 2 V's, 4 I's, and an S. But that's how you come up with Willis. That's not stolen already. So that's where you can find me. And thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me, DPZ. This is great. I look forward to seeing where this PC journey saga goes. Look forward to hearing some more stories. So best of wishes to you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you can please like and follow, comment below on any questions or anything you might have for Jack or myself, anything else you want to hear about on this show. Follow Luca Tiger LeBron on Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere else. You can follow me at PC with DPZ. Thanks again, Jack. I hope you have a really great day. Happy collecting. And I guess I'll keep my eyes out for any Randy Mosses I see out there. It sounds like I know of another Viking fan out there looking for cards.
Appreciate that. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
With nearly 40 years as the most trusted resource for collectors, dating back to the first Beckett magazine in 1984, Beckett has been the brand that bridges generations of the hobby. We're happy to be partnering with Beckett and look forward to keeping you all updated on the big things happening at the company in 2023. Beckett, it's the name you know and the name you can trust.